I just wanted to do a quick video on to blanket or not to blanket. So horse blanketing is kind of a controversial issue in terms of you know, how and when, and so I just wanted to kind of go over some of the things that I think about before I blanket my horse. So personally, for Snickers, he doesn't need a coat, he doesn't need a blanket, because his own fur is like immensely dense and long, and he has no problem keeping himself warm in the winter. I'm pausing now because it's like he doesn't get blanketed, but he also has a run-in shelter, so he does have the option to go in and be comfortable as far as dry and out of the wind. So I leave it up to him, because he can tell, you know, he's getting wet and cold, so he can go be under shelter. But if your horse doesn't have that option to be under shelter, then blanketing makes a lot more sense. Additionally, things that I consider when I blanket my horse or a horse is like, how do they grow their coat? And what are they used to? So if your horse is kept in a stable and now you're keeping them outside, you might want to offer them a blanket in the nighttime especially. But if it's like a sunny day, low wind, you know, give them a chance to take that blanket off. So a lot of people who keep their horses out in pasture just throw a blanket on them. You know, it's November 1st. Time to put a blanket on, and then they're kind of kept like that until, you know, March or something. So you really want to take the blanket off on the good days. That way your horse can roll and condition their coat. They really need to roll. It helps with itchiness, it helps with oil control, it helps with blood circulation, and you know, shedding. So a horse who can roll without a blanket is a happier horse than compared to a horse who rolls with a blanket. Lastly, I want to consider how the blanket fits. So I think that blankets can be too large often or too small, and so it's like, how do you tell? Well, if your horse is getting wear spots, that blanket might need to be addressed. You want it to be snug but loose, and that's kind of an oxymoron, like snug but loose. So you just don't want it like rolling all over the place, falling to one side, hanging off of them, but you also don't want it to be so snug that you know, they can't bend their body or get full motion. And so just looking at how your horse operates personally, like individually within the blanket, is going to give you a better idea of how to make that adjustment to the fit. And then another thing that I want to talk about as far as blanketing goes is like how we as people feel cold outside, and then we kind of look over at our horse and we're like, oh, my horse must be cold too. Well, like I said earlier, if your horse is used to being outside, they have built up a tolerance to the weather to a certain degree, and so we are much softer in that sense. You know, we have to wear our puffy jackets and our hats in order to go outside, and so for your horse, you kind of have to look at them objectively and stop putting your own thoughts onto them. So you look at your horse, are they shivering? You know, do they look unhappy? A way to tell if they are shivering is you look at their flanks and you look at their girth area, or like behind their armpit, and you can see like a little bit of a tremor. And don't get that confused with wind blow on their coat. Like if they have long fur and the wind's blowing across the tip of their fur, you know, it's going to cause a little bit of a vibration. So you know, you could lay your hand onto their body and you feel them trembling. Lighter skinned, lighter coated horses can shiver, like if it's a chilly night. And so that's why you want to really pay attention, like, is it going to be cold tonight? Throw the blanket on, but don't keep the blanket on all the time, because that's neglect in its own sense. So always, always, always look at your horse from day to day. Don't just think it's November 1st, time to roll on the blanket. And lastly, keep your blanket clean, keep it updated, like if there's tears, if there's any types of strings hanging off. You really don't want those to be bothering your horse additionally, more so than the blanket, because horses, they don't care about clothes, you know. Some horses just don't care about that. So again, we as humans kind of like to put our own ideals and ways of life onto our horses, but it's important to look at your horse and think, is that horse really in need of a blanket? If so, you know, how often? And then, do they have shelter? So anyways, that's just kind of a quick 1-2 ideas about how to blanket, when to blanket, and if or if not to blanket. Horse whiskers. See how he's putting his face so close to the ground? And do you see these little whiskers poking off of him? That is something that you want to keep. Look at those whiskers. So these are so important because their noses are extremely sensitive. I mean, look at these lips, how they're sticking out. Look at him. So he can kind of float his nose off of the ground, and he can feel what's down there due to his whiskers. And so it's so important to let these things be, and they're there for a reason. And so it helps him protect his face from being whapped into things. You know, he has a sensitive nose. The skin there, it's extremely perceptive area for him. It's definitely one of his senses. And so these whiskers really make a difference in how he's able to interpret his environment. And so you can see that he has whiskers, a plethora of whiskers, and kind of stiff fur on his nose. Hey, you. And then if you look kind of up here by his eyeballs, you can, yeah, I'm filming you. If you look up here by his eyeballs, you can see he's got a few whiskers. Hold on, buddy. He's got some whiskers right there. See? See those things? So he's got a few whiskers in a few different spots, and they are fabulous, and they belong there. And you shouldn't cut them off or trim them or do anything weird with them. You just let them be. Let it be. Just let it be. Let it be. Oh, let it be.